Welcome to the Caregiver Circle. I am your host, Kelly Abernethy, and I'm so glad that you are here with us today for one of our chats. And today I wanted to chat with you about something that has been heavily on my mind. And, as caregivers, life is still happening for us personally. And if you're like me, there are several caregivers out there that are dealing with their own health challenges. And today I want to talk a little bit about that. So, back in many years ago, I was dealing with a severe case of thrombocytopenia, otherwise known as ITP, which stands for idiopathic thrombocytopenia. But in layman's terms, it's low blood platelets. This particular diagnosis, for a period of a year, I was actually in the hospital more than I was at home with my kids and my husband at the time. And so a few years later, it developed into lupus, and I received a lupus diagnosis. And that was a couple of years before my dad had a major stroke back in 2012. When that happened, life changed for us. Thank God that he pretty much recovered from that stroke, but it still, my parents still required a little bit more support at that time. And so I was able to give it, I was able to balance the two. But then as my parents began to age and required even more support, that meant my role. I had to step it up in my role, and I became the manager of their household, meaning I was taking care of all the bills, managing their medications and their health appointments, as well as any necessary repairs or things that were needed in the house. I usually did the research and facilitated all of that while still having to manage my own life while I was somewhat of an empty nester. My kids were adults or for a period of time in college. It still was a lot happening. And that's the one thing that I think that does not get talked about a lot is that even as a caregiver, you still have a lot on your plate when it comes to your personal life. And so it's imperative that we take care of ourselves, especially if we already have a medical challenge that we're dealing with, and also to prevent one from coming. As we age, a lot of times there are new aches and pains that turn into other things that we have to manage. And so one of the things that I feel like helped me was that not that my parents, because my parents were definitely not children, but I likened it somewhat to being a caregiver of my children when they were young and they got sick and I was sick. What did you do? You do what you have to do, but you still need to take care of yourself. And so one of the biggest things I think that are important as a caregiver is that you do create your own circle, a circle of support that you can call to help you get things done. I remember during this time, I also had spinal surgery at one point, which means I could not walk. And I had friends that would, come and help me. Took advantage of grocery store deliveries and then had my children help me put groceries away. There's so many different things that you can do instead of trying to do it all. And I think that is one of the things that I experience, and I'm sure other caregivers experience, is trying to do it all. And it's not beneficial for your health. It's not beneficial for you. In all things, there needs to be balance. And that is what I found is so important that you do that. You have to take care of you. It goes back to that old adage that people have, quoted many times about being on a plane and the flight attendants instruct you in case of an emergency to put your oxygen on first and then the child or the person who you are with who needs assistance. Why? Because if you're not good, they won't be good. And so it's important to follow that, to take care of yourself. One of the other things that I think is really important, and I'm probably going to do a video on that, is contingency planning. You always need to have a plan in place should something happen. How are you going to manage? And I could recall times talking to my youngest son, who was an adult, As I took over more responsibilities with my parents, I kept everything in this notebook. And I would tell him, listen, if something happens to me or I'm not doing, that great, you pick up this book and it will have all of the information. It has your grandparents, all their bills, it has passwords, it has everything that you need to pick up the pieces and make sure those things don't go awry, to keep everything being paid on time. It had their medical information. My dad was a veteran, so he was hooked up with the VA. It had his primary care physician. It had his veterans number. It had all of that information should anything happen and I wouldn't be able to do it. And then I found, for some of you may know that this past February of 2026, I had major surgery to remove a malignant tumor on my small intestine. And so, having experienced the loss of both of my parents within such a short amount of time, learning all the different estate issues and it was so much, as you will see in some of the videos, but that helped me prepare even for surgery. I made sure that I had a will in place. I made sure that I had a power of attorney should I not be able to make decisions on my own. My children would know what to do. I instructed my sons also where my financial information was in terms of my bills that needed to be paid and account numbers and passwords. It is so important to do contingency planning. But above all, it's important to take care of you. So I hope that this encourages you to, yes, I know we love our loved ones and we want to give them the best care as possible, but giving them the best care possible means taking care of you first. God bless you. Grace and peace be unto you always. See you next time.